Today's guest works with OnX, a premier hunting navigation tool that you can download on your phone, use on your computer. And if you're a Silvercore Club member, you've already heard him share some of his insider tips on the outpost. He's talked about some of the biggest lessons he's learned in the field, mistakes new hunters should avoid, how to handle pressure on public land, and even his go-to advice for how to prepare for backcountry hunts. If you're a member and you haven't tuned into the outpost yet, you're missing out. Log into silvercore.ca, go to your club portal, and you can download your personal podcast link. If you're not a member, head over to silvercore.ca where you can learn how you can join the Silvercore Club and get access to exclusive content like this and all of the other member perks. Now, one last thing before we get rolling with this podcast. If you enjoy listening to the Silvercore podcast and you want to see it grow, I'm going to ask you to do me a huge favor. Take a screenshot of a review that you've left for the Silvercore podcast on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. Send it on in to info@silvercore.ca with your mailing address, and I'm going to send you a free Silvercore sticker as a thank you. Now, without further ado, let's get on with this podcast. He grew up in the wide open country of eastern Montana, chasing adventure with his dad and building a lifelong passion for hunting. Today, he channels that same passion into his work with OnX, where he spent nearly a decade helping shape the way hunters connect with the land through technology and storytelling. From epic hunts to his role in OnX leading Western big game marketing, his work has left a lasting mark on the hunting community. Welcome to the Silvercore podcast, Dylan Dowson.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. That was a heck of an introduction, and thank you for having me on. It's always good to talk a little hunting, and especially this time of year. I'm excited. It's coming quick.
Yeah, we're gearing up, aren't we? Well, it was Joe Appel, friend of mine in the Squamish area, who actually put me on to you and onto OnX, because prior to that, it was something that I'd kind of looked at and I thought, this is only for Americans, and being a Canadian, what has this got to do for me? And well, sure enough, you guys are in Canada too, and it works amazing. And you got some pretty cool features that are kind of fun. But let's get this thing kind of rolling. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what got you into the outdoor space and into OnX, and then we can start sharing some hunting adventures.
Yeah, I love it. Like you said in the intro, I grew up in eastern Montana, where hunting and fishing and just the outdoor lifestyle in general is easy to get into, right? I am very fortunate and blessed that I did not grow up in an area that there was strong barriers to get into it. I mean, heck, I've shot some of my best animals within 5-10 miles from the town I grew up in. So there wasn't a big barrier of entry of like, yeah, you got to, apply for these tags, and then if you get them, you can go hunting. It was just like something we just did, right? It was a way of life. And that's what I grew up doing, and very, very fortunate to do that. But yeah, eastern Montana, I mean, primarily over there, I grew up mule deer, whitetail hunting, antelope hunting as well. And then I kind of cut my teeth on elk hunting. Shoot, I was probably 11, 12, the first elk hunt that I went on. And just right away was hooked, right? Like, the age old question, if you could pick one animal, what would it be? For me, it would have to be elk with a bow in my hand. Pretty tough to beat that. I still remember the day that I heard my very first bugle, and it was one of those mornings that was just like chaos and just magical that you strive for every year. And I mean, that night I heard my first bugle, and I think I heard my 150th bugle in that same night. Just crazy evening. So anyways, needless to say, I was beyond hooked on elk hunting specifically, but yeah, I grew up in my hunting when I grew up. It was pretty secluded to eastern Montana. If it wasn't, 2-3 hour drive for an elk hunt, it was right close to home base. And now one of the things, as I have expanded, and especially working with OnX and the opportunities that's brought me to hunt other states, to come up into Canada a few different times, Alaska, did Hawaii this year, went down to Mexico this year, hunted Coues deer. I mean, just my hunting has expanded from, okay, Montana has a lot of really cool opportunities to, we have some of the tools even to draw, whether it's draw odds and application stuff for all the other states. Like, I now have the tools and the means and the drive, I guess I would call it, to apply to other states and to hunt new species and to hunt new areas and stuff. So yeah, it's been a pretty wild ride. Actually, just about a week ago, I crossed my 10 years working here at OnX. So a lot has changed in the last 10 years of OnX. When I started, it was relatively small company, 20, 30 folks that worked here, and now it's really blown up and has a ton of employees, and we're able to do cool things now, like be in Canada, right? We found
Mm.
a need for folks in the States, and we're like, we can find some data for Canada and provide that product and whatnot to you guys, our good friends up north. So yeah, it's been a pretty cool decade working here at OnX and getting to do some awesome things.
Well, what do you think the secret to the OnX growth has been? Has marketing and storytelling been an integral part of that?
It really has, yeah. And when I started, actually, I started out in customer service. It was like the job opening at the time, and I took it, right? So I was the single person on the phones, emails. There was like one other guy that would help out when we got real busy. But there's a good chance, if somebody had bought the chip, or at that stage the app on the phone was very early. If they
Mm.
had questions or anything, I was the person they were talking to back in the day. So I wasn't always on the marketing side, but needless to say, I say that because, how much we've expanded from that day. We had one customer service rep at the time. Now we hire a bunch of seasonal help as well, but I don't know, it's probably 40 plus folks just in customer service. Um,
Wow.
and yeah, I think part of that is the marketing and storytelling and, you know, the adoption of the product, but a big part of that is just the flywheel of, I give it a try, right? If you and I are hunting buddies and I try something that is, very, very impactful in the way that I hunt, and it
Mm.
lets me go hunt new areas, and you see that as my hunting buddy, and I'm either A, going to be like, hey, you have to download this because I'm trying to send you a waypoint, to where we're going to meet up at this trailhead in the dark that you've never been to. And without this waypoint, it's going to be chaos without cell service. All the
Mm.
way to, maybe I go on a hunt in a different area and find success. You're like, how did you go find that spot? I tell you on X,
Mm.
you download it, you tell three friends, they tell three friends, and it really has just kind of created that flywheel of, 10 years ago, a lot of folks still use the product and relied on it, but today it's kind of becoming one of those things where I'm going hunting, I need my rifle and my boots and my orange, and I better have my OnX downloaded because if not, it's going to be a pretty tough hunt.
I love technology. I love learning new things as they come out, but I'm also torn because I love doing things in an old-fashioned way. I still carry a map and compass with me on my hunts, and I I look at the features that OnX has, and I know I'm only scratching the surface on all the different things it does. Uh, I like when I'm driving to a location and I see areas that look good, that it's right up there on my CarPlay, and I can just boop, press the
Yep.
thing, and
Check it out for
right
later.
off it tells me. Yeah, or I can download the maps, which I don't want to sound like a shill for OnX here, but I'm just going to tell you about the things I'm excited about. I like how fast it will download maps, high resolution, high quality maps. And a lot of the areas, most of the areas that I hunt, I don't have cell reception. So I want that stuff downloaded, and I can see that all up on my vehicle if I'm driving into a location, or if I'm on the side by side or a quad, or then I get on out. Uh, there's one piece that I think OnX can do. I'm not 100% sure. I've heard of it. I've never used it. But if you down an animal and you can see it, there it is over there. It's like I shot, it's in that direction, and it kind of boogied off, and I'm pretty sure it's died over somewhere over here. But if I laser it, it can show up with certain laser devices. If I do a range find, it can show up on my app and show me how to get there. Is that fact or fiction?
Yeah, no, that is fact. We work right now with a couple different companies and got some other ones coming out soon. But essentially, right now, Loophole and 6 Hour, we work with those range finding devices that have Bluetooth, and essentially, yeah,
Mm.
you can pin on your map using those. And there's other ways of doing it, right? We have a compass mode within the Hunt app to where if you tap your location twice, it puts you in what we call compass mode, and then it has a rangefinder tool. So even if you don't have a capable rangefinder to connect with that, any rangefinder, right? So I can range something and say, that's where I saw that animal after the shot run into the trees. I know right where it is, but as soon as I lose visual, as soon as I lose elevation to get up to that other side, I'm not going to be able to see that anymore. And I think we've all done this, right? It's like I know exactly where that bull was standing. I know where that bear was standing. I'm excited. I'm just going to go. I just shot it. I'm excited. We waited, 6 days, just had it. I'm going to go find it right now. I'm pumped up. And then you get up there and you start scratching your head. It's like, was it here? Was it here? Am I
Mm-hmm.
100 yards away from where it was? Am I 2 yards away from where it was? Everything looks different. That specific bush and
Mm-hmm.
tree from across the canyon that you pinpointed and you haven't etched in your brain, you get up there, it doesn't look like the same bush and tree all of a sudden. So essentially, yeah, you can put your phone into compass mode, and long-winded way of saying it, but you can range it and say it's, you know, 327 yards away. Well, then in the app,
Mm.
I can orient my phone in compass mode and turn right and line up that area and type in 327 yards, and it will drop a waypoint. You can drop a waypoint 327 yards from your location, lined up exactly in that direction with that bearing. So now you've got a waypoint, right? You still need to go up there and do your due diligence. Can't just walk right to the waypoint and you're 100% accurate 100% of the time. But I'm telling you,
Yeah,
it will put you within a couple of feet or a yard or two from where you want to be. So
that's
you can do
huge.
it through the app, and then also again that loophole and SIG. You can also just Bluetooth to it and do it that way as well.
Huh. All right. Well, my wife's using the SIG. I'm gonna have to see if she's got the Bluetooth model and see how that works. And the kilos, I think, is what she got. I've got
Yep,
Leicas, and I've been working on Leica to see if they'll trade mine in for their new Bluetooth version. But so
yep.
far, no luck. But we'll see what we can do there.
There we go. Yeah,
Uh,
we're in conversations with Leica as well, and yeah, excited about some of the stuff that we're able to do there. And yeah, it just goes to show that the technology too, and letting the technology expand. 10 years ago, when I first started working here, that technology wouldn't have existed, right? It didn't exist, so it was
mm,
impossible to add features like that. Today, we've got that capability, and it's also one of those things too where just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean you should. To your point there with technology and where it's going, there's some things that we probably could do that we are going, have chosen and are going to choose not to do, right? At the end of the day, we love getting outdoors, we love hunting, we love the pursuit, and if we ever get to a point where it almost becomes too easy because of technology allows it to,
mm.
there's some areas for barriers there. And that's just a good conversation to keep having, right? And whether it's long range hunting or you name it, some of the gear we have now really allows us to be a lot more successful and stay out there longer and shoot further and whatever. And technology and these right here, your cell phones, are another piece of that conversation that we continually have here at OnX.
Yeah, that was where I was going to go with this too. Do you get many? I mean, there's always going to be people, especially in the hunting firearms world. Well, you're not a hunter. You use quads. You got to use the quads God gave you. Well, you're not a
Yep.
hunter because you use a rifle. I use a bow, or I'm a musket. I'm a muzzle
Yep.
loader. There's always going to be those things, and there's going to be the naysayers. Do you get much heat from people saying, "No, no, no, this technology's making it unfair for hunters"?
We get more heat from, I'll call it spot burning, than we do for
Ah.
technology. Not to say, and again, I'm not really on this side of the business anymore with customer service. I'm sure that there's been folks that have reached out and said, "Hey, I don't like this feature. I think this is crossing the line," or et cetera, et cetera. But
Mm.
yeah, we get more heat from, "Hey, I had this amazing honey hole before OnX because I was the only one that did the research to get back in this one piece of public using this age old easement. And now with
Mm.
OnX, everybody knows about it, right?" We get more of that, which I totally understand, right? Like we've got our spots. I've got my spots I like going, and I don't like running into other hunters. And 100%, that's fair, and we recognize that. And kind of our, not rebuttal to get into an argument about it, but our conversation back is like, well, how many new spots have you found because of OnX,
Mm.
right? Like sure, you might have that one spot that, there's a couple other hunters that know about how to legally get in there now and hunt successfully. But what about all the other spots that you found because of it? And usually folks are like, yeah, okay, that's actually a good point. I just hunted a brand new state that would have been really hard to do without the tool. So, yeah, there's, pros and cons to some of that. And we absolutely recognize that. But honestly, it's so small. The feedback that we get like that, it is, you know, a percentage of folks that feel that way. And usually we get the stories of like, man, you got to look at this picture of this buck. Like I took my kid hunting for the first time in a new state. Like there's no way possible without OnX that we would have been able to shoot this buck and that type of stuff. So it's overwhelmingly positive responses. But yeah, we recognize, with I'll say it this way: with great power comes great responsibility with technology, and
Mm.
um, yeah, continuing to have that conversation. That's one thing that I've been proud about, working at OnX is having those conversations and making sure that we feel good about what we are doing and the much more important, larger scale, system of the hunting industry that we happen to work in.
So a friend of mine called up, says, Trav, got a general open season hunt here in BC. It's something that I found this area. I've hunted with my family, and this year we're not able to get the family members up for whatever reason. Still want to go. I'd love if you'd come up and join me with it. This is going to be for an elk hunt. So of course I said yes, 100%, absolutely I will. Um, Being somebody who has a passion for elk hunting, and being somebody who works for OnX who can provide some tips and tidbits, what sort of advice would you give me if you wanted to see me or anybody else out there successful on a northern British Columbia elk hunt? And what sort of things would you be relying on or utilizing with the OnX app to help in that success?
Yeah, that's a great question. The thing I'll start off by saying there is how I use the Hunt app and how you use the Hunt app are going to be entirely different. And the cool thing about the tool itself is it's just a tool, right? It's same thing as a bow or a rifle. If we are rifle hunting and we both get the brand new long range fancy Leica optic on top and all this fancy stuff, and you go shoot it and learn it and figure out the dope on it and practice with it, and I zero it at 100 yards the day before season, you're going to be a lot more efficient with that tool than I am, right?
Mm.
So at the end of the day, it's a tool, and there is some, I'll call it practicing with it, just like you would with a rifle or breaking in a new pair of boots before a hunt. That is, I wouldn't say required, but it's very helpful to be more successful. Um, so I guess that's a little bit preseason going into it. I would say if somebody hasn't really explored the app and know its ins and outs, which most folks don't, to your point, you feel like you haven't scratched the surface. And I will
Mm.
say, I've said this for a long time, that I don't have data to back this statement up at all, but I feel like 90% of OnX users use less than 10% of its capability. Most folks out there are just using it to see, okay, where am I at on the map? I might mark a waypoint where the truck is so I can find it if I get lost. And that's about it. And the cool thing is they're still finding enough value in that to subscribe and still be loyal, customers of ours, but there's so much more to it. And the biggest thing I tell folks is to get in there and practice. Like, heck, last night I was laying in bed and I'm e-scouting for this coming weekend where I'm going to go put some boots on the ground in some new country for a rifle elk permit that my wife drew. But essentially, my point there is like, if you're laying in bed at night or sitting on the couch or, sitting at an airport and you got a couple hours, get in OnX and just tap all the buttons. See what they do. You're not going to break it. People are so afraid with technology, they're going to break it. Um, but get in there, tap the buttons, turn the layers on, turn the layers off, see what that does to your map, see how you're going to find the most value in it. And that's step one, right? Just tap the buttons, see what they do, mark a waypoint, change the color on it, add notes to it, add a photo to that waypoint, text it to your buddy. Just see how that works. So when you get out there in the field, you're not, when you get out there, the last thing you want to do is spend a ton of time on your phone anyways, right? You want to use the
Hmm.
tool to be successful, but you don't want to learn OnX while you're on a hunt. You've got better things to do. You're out there to hunt. So learn it before would be my first thing, and tap those buttons and share waypoints and do all that fun, cool stuff. Um, and then definitely save a few offline maps, which you alluded to. A lot of folks don't, realize that maybe where they're going, they don't have service or whatnot. But regardless, even if you're not 100% sure, just save a few maps. You can save multiple maps on top of it. So you could save a giant area. For example, I've got the entire state of Montana saved on my phone in low resolution maps. So it doesn't take up a ton of storage because there's a lot of areas of Montana I don't need saved, but I want to make sure that anywhere I go, I've got a map. I can see what's private, what's public. I can see my location. I can get a
Mm.
map. And then the areas that I specifically know I'm going to go in and hunt, then I will dive into those areas, whether it be an entire unit, a mountain range, a general area, and I'll save medium or high resolution maps there. So the reason that you don't just save the entire, state of Montana or a large chunk of area in high res maps is that it just eats up a lot of storage on your phone. If
Mm.
you have the storage, great, go for it. But if you don't need to be able to zoom in really tight on the imagery and see oh, that's a rock outcropping with a tree on the right side, very, very specific detailed imagery, you can get away with the low res maps and then go in and save medium or high where you are going specifically. So then once I cross over that border of that save map, now I can zoom in really tight. I've got the best imagery saved. I've got all the, everything I need there. So learn it, save maps for offline use. And then as far as layers and stuff, that's where we really get into how I use it and how you use it are going to be different. One of the layers, for example, that excuse me, I really like is slope angle layer. So you turn on slope angle layer and it kind of it changes the colors on your map. And at first it can be a little overwhelming. You got reds, you got greens, you got blues, and it's just a color vomit on your map all of a sudden. But you look at the top and there's a scale bar and it'll tell you what that color gradient is. And so this is really helpful for identifying benches and saddles, and just if you're going up through a cliffy mountain, for example, it will identify better than almost anything else your best path to hike to the top of the mountain and not get cliffed out. Um,
Mm.
so think of it like a topo map or LiDAR, but almost more detailed. And based on past hunts, I know we did a spring bear hunt a couple years ago in Idaho, and we packed out two bears out of a canyon. And with the slope angle turned on, there was a lot of purple involved in our hike up. And purple, I now know, having been in it, is hands and feet, you're grabbing onto trees above you to pull you up the mountain, essentially. And so, especially when you look at waypoints and when you've been in areas that you know what it was like to come out of that canyon, and then you look at slope angle, and it's okay, now I start to understand, we want to stay in this area, or if there's little blotches of purple and blue mixed within that mountain, those are generally cliffy areas where you will get cliffed out. If you look at a topo map and even 3D, a lot of times you don't see those little cliffy pockets where, if you're coming out heavy or in the dark with a headlamp and it's raining and it's slippery, you want to just avoid those at all costs, right? And the slope angle layer
Mm.
can really help you depict that and help A, find navigation routes for you, B, find navigation routes for the game you're pursuing, and C, little things like benches and I've used it to find water before on the side of a mountain and all that good stuff. So that's one
Mm.
example of a layer, a piece of data that I like using. Now you might use it and be like, that's not really helpful for me. But what is helpful for me is using TerrainX on the desktop beforehand, and finding north facing stuff between 15 and 22 degrees between this elevation band, right? There's so many things that you as a hunter are going to approach it differently than I am. And again, it just goes back to the tool and, what is your method of hunting too? Because if I like calling in bulls and you like stalking into them or spot and stalking, we're probably going to use the tool a little bit different, for those different use cases of hunting. So hopefully that answered your question a little bit. It was kind of a long-winded way of, there's a lot to it. And,
Mm.
Everybody's going to use it differently. There's not really a cheat code, right? I think a lot of times with OnX, people want to say like, what do I need to do to use it to be successful, and what's the cheat code? And there's not. Just like there's no cheat code of, okay, you just bought a fancy rifle with a high dollar Leica on top, and that doesn't mean you can go shoot an animal at 700-800 yards out of the box,
Mm-mm.
nor should you. So there's you you kind of get out of it what you put into it, and that is to, again, circling back to the folks that are like, oh, OnX just makes this easier for everybody. It's like, well, if you're really passionate about your hunting and you want to learn and be more successful, you can use it to be successful. But it's just because you download the OnX Hunt app does not mean everybody's on the same level playing field with maps and how they use them.
So if we were to take OnX out of the picture and you wanted to provide some, let's say, elk specific tips that suit your style of hunting, what would you suggest to somebody going out if they wanted to be successful for elk?
Are you thinking archery or rifle or rut? I
Rifle.
guess I should call it rifle. So I primarily, I will just say firsthand, I've shot 3 cow elk with a rifle. I've not shot a single bull with a rifle because archery elk is like kind of my thing.
Mm.
I like hunting them in the rut, so all of my bull elk have been with a bow, and then rifle. Once rifle season happens, I kind of transition to deer, antelope, and stuff. So I don't have a
Mm.
ton of rifle elk hunting experience besides filling the freezer with some cow elk. Um, but I guess, rut hunting in general, I'll say that because your guys' rifle, does it start pretty early? Can you rifle hunt during the rut?
Yep. Yeah.
So perfect. How I have found my success in elk hunting during the rut is it's a little bit dependent on the country, right? I grew up in eastern Montana. There's elk over there in pockets. Like it's open, more open terrain. There's timber, but it's not like, a dark black wall of timber, for example. Now I live in western Montana where I'm looking out my window to some pretty rugged mountains. Yeah, there's some open parks and whatnot, but primarily like there's a lot of timber in mountainous country. So if I'm in mountainous timbered country, I love calling in elk. Like it is,
Mm.
I just love it, right? It might not be the most successful way, the best way to kill a bull on that particular day, but I really love that rush of playing that cat and mouse and having a bull cut me off and scream at my face while he's tending his cows. And like, there's nothing that beats that feeling to me. So that's how I choose to hunt elk over here where there's timber is I like to find them. I like to locate them. And a lot of times what I'm doing there is covering country at night, whether in the vehicle or on foot, or just sitting and listening to different basins at night, just to get a gauge for it. There's a bull in this drainage. I can hunt him tomorrow. I hate nothing more than hunting in the morning and not knowing if there's elk in the area. I'd rather be
Mm.
up a lot the night before and hear a bugle and be like, okay, there's a bull there. I know I'm at least in the game tomorrow morning because I know there's a bull in this area. Um, so again, I spend a lot of time in the evenings and at night or getting up very early to hear a bugle. So I'm hunting elk. I'm not just hunting, right? I know there's a bull there
Mm.
that I can go after. I'm either going to screw it up or kill him, but at least there's an elk I'm hunting. So yeah, locating them is big for me. And then also after that, again, calling in bulls, like I love getting in close, challenging them when you can, and having that bull upset and coming in mad is there's nothing cooler. But depending on how fired up he is, if he has cows or not, I'm using calling techniques or having hopefully a buddy calling a little ways behind me to suck in a bull and have a close encounter. Like that's how I cut my teeth out hunting. My very first bull called him in. My uncle called him in for me to like 6 or 7 yards max, and he turned broadside and screamed, and it was like I still remember that noise
Wow.
that close to me as I was at full draw, and I shot him at like 6 yards. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it's just like the and actually that bull is right here next to me. One of just a great mountain timber bull. Like it was that hunt was amazing. So anytime I'm in the mountains and in the timber, I just prefer to call them in because it's more
Mm.
fun for me. Um, Transitioning a little bit to more eastern Montana style hunting or just more plains hunting, right? Like it's not dedicated to eastern Montana, but it's a little bit more open country. It's breaky, it's craggy. There's timber pockets, but it's not like deep dark timber in the mountains. I have found way more success in that country locating an elk, letting him, and sometimes I try to get him talking. Last year I killed a bull, and I found him the night before, glassed him up the night before. So I went in there. I knew there was an elk in the area. He had cows, and I went in there, and it was just silent that morning. Not a peep, nothing going on. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I need to know where he is before I commit to getting in there, so he doesn't, win me, and I don't blow it before I even start it. So
Mm.
I bugled. He responded. I'm like, okay, I got him. I know where he is. And then we kind of did that for another 4 or 5 times. I would cover 100 yards, 200 yards, and sit, because I don't know if they're coming toward me. I don't know what they're doing, and so I'd sit there for a while, nothing. So I'd bugle again. He would respond. I'm like, okay, got him. Now I'd move another 200-300 yards, sit, wait, nothing. So we kind of did that until I got close enough that it made him mad, and then he started bugling a lot on his own. Once he
Mm.
started bugling a lot on his own, I just shut up. I didn't cow call, didn't bugle, and as long as he was giving up his location, all I was doing was making sure the wind was right and slipping in. And that's how I've killed probably the last 5 or 6 bulls, is letting
Mm.
them talk and just slipping in, and, without any of the elk knowing you're there. Because there's been so many times, right? Like when I shot my bull last year, he stepped out and I shot him. There was a cow like under 10 yards right to the left of me, just over a rise. I could see like her ears. If I were
Mm.
to call and stop that bull or try to get him to come out, like that cow's just going to pick up her head and see me. I'm pretty much in the wide open at 10 yards. Like it's going to be game over. They've been with the same elk all
Mm.
night. They know what elk are around. All of a sudden you throw in a different cow call, like in the kitchen of all these elk, and they're like, whoa, what, like who, where's this coming from? What's going on here? Like obviously there's times where I've gotten away with it and I have called in bulls in that country, but wildly more oftentimes than not, let them talk, slip in there, and get an arrow, or rifle if you can. Obviously makes it a little bit easier because you don't have to get in that 50-ish yards or in. But yeah, let them talk and slip in undetected is kind of how I've been doing it recently, more in open terrain.
Mm. So I've got a northern British Columbia elk hunt. I'll be on that for a couple weeks. We're going up early and then going into the rut. I get back from that, I'll be up to Alaska. It'll be my first time in Alaska. Never been there before, so I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome.
Friend of mine, yeah, a friend of mine, she's big in the fishing world, April Vokey. She says, I got this thing going on over in this company called Chrome Chasers, and you should come on over and let's do something together. So we'll be there for a week, her and her family, and me and my family. And then I've got another elk hunt in Alberta. I've never hunted in Alberta before, but this is going to be your more open plains type thing. So I'm absorbing what I can from you, from your experience, and I've got a lot of research to do before I jump into that one. So that'll be fun. How about you? What kind of plans you got lined up for this season?
It's going to be a busy fall. The draws were good to us this year, thankfully. So I'm going to kick it off. Plans are a little bit up in the air right now, but I'm going to kick it off with a Wyoming elk hunt. So as I was just saying, I typically archery hunt elk with, I just archery hunt elk unless I'm trying to fill the freezer with a cow or something late season. Wyoming this year, the plan right now anyways, is to take a rifle. I might still take a bow depending on, and then hit like the last few days of archery and then be there for rifle opener. But that one's going to be a horseback style hunt, kind of a
Cool.
wilderness backcountry, like really, really cool. It's been a while. I usually do a horse hunt every year, every other year or something. I fortunately have some friends with some horses, and it's kind of like a boat, that saying. It's like the only thing better than owning horses is having a friend who owns horses. Um,
Yep.
so anyways, I've done a little bit of it, but not necessarily hey, we're going deep in the backcountry for 10 days and we're taking a horse string type of hunt. So I'm excited for that one to kick it off. And then actually after I rifle hunt Wyoming, I'm going to come back and archery hunt Montana. It'll be kind of a later season hunt into October. But I found some success, there when a lot of folks come third week September, second week of September, and you know hunt it out, and there's a lot of competition. And then after that, a lot of folks go home, and it's kind of nice to have less competition in the woods, and some bulls still fired up late season. So come back in archery hunt Montana. Followed up with a rifle mule deer and rifle antelope hunt. I drew my antelope permit this year in Montana. And then my wife, this is kind of I've got a lot of hunts this year, but this is the one I'm most excited for. My wife drew one of Montana's hardest to get rifle bull elk tags, and she's never shot an elk before. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and it's a heck of a unit. I'm gonna go put some boots on the ground this weekend actually, and scout it, learn it a little bit better. But just the trophy potential in there is pretty crazy, and she's never shot an elk before, so super excited for that hunt, probably more than any of the other ones, and just help her, hopefully shoot her first bull. And I hope I keep telling her I hope it's bigger than any bull I've killed, for her first one.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of my goal, but we'll see. It'll be a blast no matter what. A little bit challenging because we didn't really expect her to draw this tag. It's so hard to get, and we have a 4 and a 2-year-old at home, so we're going to be hunting, and B, going to be having babysitters hang out with them, and grandparents are going to be involved. And
Mm.
but the goal, what I would love, is for them to be at least in camp when she shoots a bull, so they can come experience that. And we did that last year with some antelope, and they were there kind of along for it and got to experience it. And just to see them, like, you know, we went fishing this past weekend, for example, and then we ate some fish 2 nights ago, and to see that connection, right, of like, oh, here's what we're doing, and now we're eating it, and this is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
My 4-year-old, we'll be eating steak, and he just knows now at this point, if we're eating burger or steak, it's elk. And
Mm.
we'll be eating steak, and he's like, Dad, which bull is this? And then he wants me to like point to which one it is that we are eating, and whatnot. And so that's super cool to see, and especially from an early age. And so, yeah, long-winded way of saying I hope at least that they're in camp, or can be close when she does shoot her first elk.
I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle. I think people in general are fairly disconnected from their food. And however you can bridge that gap, whether that's gardening in the backyard or going to the farm market, seeing the process of where food lives, if you're a meat eater, and how it ends up on your table. And if you're a hunter, having the kids involved with this, because it creates such an appreciation, not just for the food, but also for life in general. And I find that death is such a closed door activity nowadays that it creates a warped idea in a lot of people's minds. What they see
Mm-hmm.
as death, the closest thing they get is going to be video games, and that's not really a healthy representation of life and death. I think it's really important to be raising your kids and raising your family with that connection to nature. Have you
Yeah.
done a lot of hunts with your wife? And of course, your kids being young, 2 and 4, probably not a ton with them, but is hunting with a family a big thing you do?
It is. So my wife, when we first met, she had never shot a gun.
Mm,
So actually, the very first time we ever, hung out, we went to the country and shot some guns, and like that was kind of how we got to know each other. But yeah, so it wasn't. She didn't grow up hunting or anything like that, but we've hunted deer for probably 6 or 7 years now together. She shot a lot of really nice bucks with me, a couple of antelope, um, hopefully a big bull elk this year. But we get out when we can, and it is important, and I really appreciate that time. A lot of the hunts I do too are like somewhat work related, and so they're out of state stuff. So I wouldn't say like we're hunting partners every time, but when we can, we definitely make time to get out with each other. And yeah, I'm excited for the boys to start coming with us. And yeah, the antelope last year, for example, the boys were with my dad in the pickup, and my wife and I went out and made a couple stalks, shot 2 nice bucks, and then they were able to come get pictures, with us and the animals, and then also see like us breaking them down in the field and then putting that
Mm,
meat on ice. And to me, that was like very important for them to be there for that because, like you said, not only the connection to death and your food, but it's like here's the process and like here's the work that goes into it. And it's really hot out right now, and like you're cutting up meat and getting it on ice, and that's like we value this a lot. And yes,
mm.
it's fun to go hunting and it's fun to get that shot on a nice buck, but we really value like taking care of the meat and then processing it ourselves if you can, or whatever you need to do there. But then pulling it out of the freezer and being like, hey, this is the antelope buck that mom shot last year that you were with, like, and that connection, like you can already just see the wheels turning in their minds, which is really really important and cool to be able to do.
It's funny some of the similarities that I'm sensing here. So my wife as well had never shot a firearm prior to meeting me, and she came from a very liberal, left-leaning family and background. So much so, so her maiden name is Sinclair. She's directly related to Margaret Sinclair, who was Pierre Elliott Trudeau's wife, Justin Trudeau's mother. There was always that sort of liberal sentiment in the family, and to see where her upbringing was and where she is now, what the driver for her, she's a chef by trade, was that connection to the food and wanting just to be deeper connected to it. And it's funny watching people who come from a very liberal background and opening up to what's more this redneck hunting, fishing sort of culture, not in a redneck way, and
Yeah,
seeing how that resonates with them and seeing how their lives change. And I can tell you without a doubt, my best hunts have always been with family, with my wife, with my kids. And there's something really special about that when you're sitting down at the table and everyone, like my son, is this from the deer that I shot last season? And going on and telling his
yeah,
sister about the adventure. I mean, there's something to that.
yeah. No, it's really cool. And yeah, I feel very fortunate to be able to, you know kind of tying it back into OnX in some sense, right? Like I've gotten to do a lot of really cool things because of the opportunities that I've been given through this job that I currently have, and working in the industry. And yeah, it's just expanded what I personally have done or probably would have done with my personal hunting. Montana, there's a lot of things to do. There's a lot of critters, a lot of seasons, and that's kind of where my mind was. And you brought up Alaska, and I've been to Alaska twice, and they were, both kind of opportunities through my job to
Mm,
go explore and hunt Alaska. And it's just amazing. Like the first one was Kodiak. We hunted Sitka blacktail on Kodiak. Just the
cool.
the coolest place probably I've ever been. Amazing. And then last year went up to northern Alaska, and I shot a caribou with my bow up there. And just another thing that I wouldn't say that I wouldn't have done it, right, but it would just be a lot harder to do. And it's less likely that I would get to go do those type of things without some of the things. So yeah, I just feel super super fortunate to be able to do those things and explore new areas, from deer hunts in Colorado to Alaska. My wife and actually, this one definitely wasn't a work one, but my wife and actually we got married. It's just been a little over 5 years ago, right in the peak of the COVID and
Mm,
pandemic. And you know we couldn't really travel anywhere for a honeymoon, right? Like it was hard to travel and go do anything at that time. So we had our wedding and got married, and kind of set aside a honeymoon fund in the gun safe for 5 years, and thankfully didn't touch it.
mm.
This year we went to Hawaii and did our honeymoon on our 5 year anniversary, or close to our 5 year anniversary. And um, I hunted axis deer down there, so it was cool to tie in a morning of axis deer hunting in a new area, and be able to do that on quote my honeymoon was pretty awesome.
Nice. What island?
We were on Maui.
Okay. I hunted axis on Molokai. That was
Nice.
that's kind of a neat experience. They're everywhere.
Yeah,
And I've
yeah,
I've never
it's
had a deer bark at me before, but that was kind of cool.
yeah, it was an experience for sure. I mean, we were a little earlier than the rut,
Mm.
but we saw in one morning probably 300-400 deer.
Crazy.
I mean, a ton of deer, only a couple mature bucks. But yeah, it was cool hunt. And yeah, I know not too many guys can say on their honeymoon they went hunting. So very fortunate on that end.
100%. Can you tell me about Scuba Moose?
You, yeah. So Scuba Moose, that's a whole podcast by itself there. That's a pretty crazy story. So this was shoot, probably 5, 6 years ago at this point, maybe a little longer even. My dad called me and he said, well, he called me much earlier than this, but he called me and he said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing a archery moose hunt in British Columbia." I was like, "You've got my interest.
Hmm.
What's going on?" And so him and a friend of his were talking about going up and doing this kind of once in a lifetime moose hunt. Um, and it was one of those things where I didn't, have the money to go do it myself, but I was like, 100% I'm coming with. Figure out what it would cost for me to come, just as a non-hunter in camp and be there and experience it. So I went up with him. We drove like 35 hours from Montana, hopped on a float plane, just crazy stuff for us. Like I know some folks that live up there, that's just kind of what you do, right? But it's not
Sure.
what we do in Montana. We don't use float planes and get dropped off in the middle of nowhere like that. And it was just a really cool experience. And again, this could be a 2 hour long conversation with this hunt in particular, but essentially had an amazing hunt. The hunting was relatively slow for the first 4 or 5 days. Weather started to come in, and this was an archery moose hunt, and the lakes were starting to freeze up a little bit, and then they would thaw during the day. Fast forward a couple days, and we saw and called in just like an absolute giant bull. I don't know. I mean, I've been around some showers moose in Montana and whatnot, and you watch videos and whatnot. You know what a big bull is, just like any animal. But
Hmm.
it was like one of those bulls that you didn't have to know a single thing about moose to know, like, holy cows, this thing is giant. Um,
Mm.
and so yeah, I was standing right next to my dad when this bull came across in front of us, like 40 yards, and he drew, and the bull stopped, like kind of quartering to us, and I videoed this whole thing, just on like a crappy little handy cam and whatnot, and put together a video on it. But yeah, the bull stopped, quartering to, and my dad was at full draw, and like I whispered in his ear, like, "Don't shoot!" Like that shoulder was just right there, and it would have been a pretty risky shot. And he obviously was thinking the same thing. And when that bull went to leave, he turned. My dad shot, got an arrow in him, and he drew his bow again, and I stopped that bull as he was kind of going out of sight. He shot again, got a second arrow in him, um, and yeah, that bull went around and bedded. And there's so many pieces to this story that kind of made it all like a really unique scenario. But keep in mind that the lakes were freezing over. That's a key part.
Mm.
So this bull goes over and beds, and another bull. We accidentally called in another bull, and it came and got him out of his bed, bumped him up, and we watched him go in the timber. And we could tell, like, this, it was a fatal shot, like you could tell for sure, but it
Mm.
might take a little bit of time. So we had some discussions. It's like, should we back out? Should we wait? Should we wait till dark and then go try and recover him? And we unanimously decide, like, let's just back out. That bull's going to be there. We'll come in
Mm.
right away first thing in the morning. That bull's going to be there. Let's not push him. Let's do the right thing here. So we hiked all the way back out, went to go get picked up, and the main guide picked us up. We told him about this crazy bull and this crazy what just happened, and he was excited, and then the look on his face just changed, and we're like, what's the matter? And he was like, the float plane called and they have to pick us up tomorrow morning. We have a crazy weather system coming in, and they're worried that, like, if they don't get their hunters out tomorrow morning, like now, that we're going to be stuck here. So
Mm.
that changed things from, like, we were pretty high spirits of, like, that bull, there's a good chance that bull probably is already dead, laying in his bed, but we're not going to push it. We're going to just find him first thing in the morning. To looking at the clock, and we're like, we've got like 45 minutes until it's dark. Let's go recover that bull now,
Mm.
because we have to get him cut up, because we have to leave first thing tomorrow morning. So we basically ran all the way back there, picked up the blood. It was great blood, found the arrow. We're tracking that bull through the timber, and he was almost expired, jumped out of his bed. We bumped him, and he ran straight into the water. And the whole time, like, the guides were telling us, like, if a moose gets hit and he runs into the water, like, it's okay. Like, it happens. They've recovered several moose from the lakes before. Go get a raft if you need to. Get it to shore, cut it up. Like, it happens. Not a big deal. Well, this bull went out there and he died and sunk and did not resurface. And we were standing there looking right where we had last seen him and just waiting, and waiting and waiting, and finally pulling out our headlamps and stuff and looking, and no moose. And, it was kind of a weird, how everything happened was just a crazy set of circumstances, but we were just waiting for this moose to float, and he never did. Well, it got so dark that we were like, there's nothing we can do. The water was basically freezing. So at one point I was like, what if we built a fire and I swam out there and tried to, find him and wrap something around his paddle or whatever, right? Just all options are on the table. And the guide right away was like, yeah, that's absolutely not happening. Like, even if we build a big fire, like, there's hypothermia and, risk of whatever. So anyways, we hike back, go back to the cabin, and essentially we devised a plan that the next morning the float plane would show up, we would hop in it, we would fly over to that lake where the moose was in. He would be floating because moose float, and recover him and start working him up while they start shuttling the other folks in gear out. And so we're still like, all right, well, that's what's going to happen. And again, the set of circumstances, like, the float plane ended up not showing up until like 4 p.m. the next afternoon because of some other things that went wrong. And so hindsight, we could have left him, but it's just, you don't know, and you play the hand that you're dealt. And essentially when they showed up, we flew the other lake and we did everything that we could. And there, he still hadn't floated. There's nothing there. We couldn't see through the water. There was just no signs of this moose. And essentially the pilot was like, you guys are leaving. You don't have a choice. We have to get you out of here right now. So we essentially did everything we could, and we're forced to leave. And yeah, it was just incredibly disheartening when we left. All of our gear loaded behind us. We flew right over that lake, and between frantically searching for any sign of that moose and knowing what had happened and where he was, it was just like, just the craziest feeling ever of super hard hunt, once in a lifetime hunt for us. No moose sightings to like the biggest bull that we will probably ever see in our lifetime at 40 yards, to that happening. And now we're going home and there's nothing we can do about it. It's out of our hands. So, essentially some phone calls were made, and we were like, hey, we realize it's incredibly bittersweet because that meat is no longer ours, even if we recover this bull. But my dad wanted to go up and give it one more shot to try and find him, right? To just kind of more put an end to the story of, we did every possible thing we could to recover that moose. And so I think it was June or July when the ice came off, and we headed up north, hop back in a float plane, another 35-hour drive up there, hop back in a float plane.
Wow.
With all sorts of camping gear, with chains, ropes, pulleys, whatever we could to possibly, we had an entire winter to think about how we could recover this moose if he is still at the bottom of the lake. And we flew in there with enough camping gear for 3 or 4 days, and which honestly, like, obviously I wish we would have just recovered that bull when he had shot him. But it was also it was cool to go back into that country, because I left that the previous fall being like, I'll never be back here. Like, what are the chances I will ever step foot in this country again? And it was almost like one of those things where you're sad leaving. So it was cool to go back into that same country. Obviously I wish it was under different circumstances, but we got to the lake and we buzzed a couple times with the plane and didn't see anything. And we were about to get dropped off, and the pilot switched directions on which way he was flying the lake. And we flew around the other way. And I still remember I had a headset on and the pilot did, but my dad and the guide that came back in with us did not. And so I was talking to the pilot, and he was like, I think I see something. and he turned around and went a little bit lower and banked the plane really hard. And he's like, I got him. He's like, that's the bull. He's right on the shore, like absolute giant. Like I see him. And I remember I'd asked him like 5 times. I was like, are you sure this is like, that's my dad's bull? Cause I didn't want to tell my dad like, hey, we got him, cause he couldn't hear our conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to tell him we got him if it wasn't, or if it was just a different deadhead or something. Right. And so he's like, there's no way that's not that bull. It's like one of the biggest moose I've seen around here. And I can tell from the plane. So I tapped him on the shoulder, gave him a thumbs up, and it's so loud in those beavers that you can't really hear each other.
Yeah.
But it was just a really cool moment. And we landed and recovered him and all the bones. What we had determined was at some point, I don't know if it took a while for the ice to actually get up there or what happened. I don't know if a grizzly, like if he floated and a grizzly went out and got him and drug him to shore, or if he floated and pushed to shore. But that entire embankment around where that moose was dug out, and there was bear sign everywhere. So at some point, whether it be that spring or the winter before hibernation, a bear had been on that moose and had completely dug out the bank, because I had video and photos from the air of what that bank looked like before and then after when we got there, and it was just like a grizzly just lived on top of that moose essentially. So it was a bunch of bones in the water and the skull and that moose was in perfect shape, and brought him back home and cleaned him up, and now he's in my dad's shop. Which again, it wasn't necessarily going back for the trophy aspect of it, right? It was more just like, we knew he was right there. There's nothing we could do. Like, we can go back and try to recover him to kind of close the story, if you will. And it was more a sense of accomplishment for us to go back and do it. Then it was like, oh, it's a really big bull, so we got to go back and get him, right? It was much more fulfilling just to like, we did everything we could, and finally we recovered him. So it was a pretty crazy, from the time he shot that bull till we recovered him was like 5 months or so. And just a crazy ordeal.
What a heck of an emotional roller coaster. It was. So I think you flew with Nick Hawes's company out of Burns Lake there, which is Lake District. I think that was the company you flew with.
It might have been. It was Dease Lake.
Was it Dease Lake?
Yeah.
Okay. I saw a little clip. I saw on the back of the plane the LD on there, but those bush pilots, they're built a little different. And if they say it's time to come out, you kind of have to listen to them, because their threshold for comfort probably exceeds your threshold for comfort when you're out there.
Yeah.
I remember Nick was flying us to during the hunting season. He'll fly people into different guide outfitters areas, and he set up some cabins on a few lakes, and he's got an agreement. He says, look, I don't fly people in for hunting unless they're coming for you, but summertime fishing, I got my fishing lodges and people can use them and rent them. So anyways, went up there with my family, did a fishing trip on one of these one of the lakes where he's got a cabin set up. And we're flying out there, and he's talking about, he says, I don't mean to scare you, Trav, but man, these things break all the time. Because I was asking where his other plane was, right? We're flying in on a Beaver, he had a 180 Cessna, and he's like, these things break all the time. And he's going to all the problems and issues that the planes have. And he's taking pictures as we fly in. It was about an hour flight that we took, and I'm like, what are you doing? He said, well, that other guy at the that I had at the docks there, he was helping load. He's a pilot. He's a helicopter pilot, and he also flies fixed wing and commercially, and he's just coming on board to help me out. Oh, okay. So I'm just taking pictures of the weather patterns so that he's got a better idea of what this looks like, because he's used to these short runs. This longer run is you got to start making decisions as do we turn around or not, right? Anyways, he's going on and he's talking about stuff, and I'm looking like I'm not really seeing anything that looks too terrible. I think most of their flying is going to be VFR, visual flight rules, and every once in a while you end up getting clouded out a bit, and so you're IFR. But he says, we're going to come around this bank, we're going to see, it's our final approach, and it's our very last decision-making time if we hit the lake or not. And this is after about an hour of flying, and we're just about ready to land. And I thought he was joking, just giving because I'm looking, it looks fine enough. Anyways, he goes in. He says, "Okay, we're doing it." Lands the plane. I'm like, I don't get why he's acting like this. We run in, we get the spikes off the door of the cabin because he's got these plywood with spikes coming up to keep the bears out, right? And get the boards off the windows. He says, "Okay, you're good starting the fridge. You're good with the stuff, and see ya. We're out," right? And so he's gone. Fair enough. We spend the a week out there. All of our fresh food didn't really stay fresh because his fridge didn't work, and so thankfully we were able to catch lots of fish, and that was our fresh food. He comes back in, and I'm asking him about his buddy. He says, "Oh, well, how's your buddy doing? I thought maybe he'd be flying out." He said, "No, he quit." "What do you mean he quit?" He said, "I showed him these pictures that I took, and that was it." He says, I don't have the stomach for this." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So then I sit in the plane, and the seat breaks. And I'm like, "I'm okay. It's fine. I can do an ab crunch when we go up." He's like, "Nope, if your seat isn't secured in properly, we're not taking off. Safety first." I'm like, "Okay, fine." And gets his Leatherman out, and he turns his screw like a little half turn and just kind of catching onto the back of my seat. He's like, "There we go. Now we're safe." I'm like, "All right." So I'm doing the ab crunch anyways, right? We take on off, and man, he's a great guy. Very competent pilot. My wife and son and daughter and dog are in the back of this beaver, and I'm the passenger up front because I got a little bit more leg room. They're all crammed in the back. He's got the plane on the side, and he's pointing out different sheep and different terrain. And my son, he was training to become a pilot since an early age. So I think at that age he was about 13 or 14, and so he's cool as a cucumber. This is all new. He's all used to it. And my daughter and wife are back there, and they see the light come on the plane, and this thing start flashing, and my wife's tapping me on the back shoulder, and he's pointing out the window, looking at stuff, and all of a sudden we run out of fuel. And but it's got 2 tanks, right? We got enough room that we could float down if we needed to, glide down to a lake. And so he's madly pumping the thing and writing it up. But I guess all of this is to say that their comfort level for adventure and risk is pretty high if they've made a living out of flying people into the backcountry. So if they call in and say, "We have to get you out," I'm going to listen to them because you probably have to leave.
Yeah. It was just such a cool experience. And just being in that plane, it was like, again, it's not what we do in Montana. And yes, people have used planes to access country and whatnot, but that part was, I wouldn't say as cool as the hunt itself, but it was just like a part of the experience, right? And like talking to those pilots, heard some crazy stories because we were, a little over an hour flight probably too, and one way, and just having conversations and learning about their life and how they became to be a bush pilot is pretty cool. And I don't know how much truth there is to this, but there's probably some. Pete, one of the main guide with us, was telling us, about all of his flight stories over the years and situations and stuff. And he's like, "Yeah, you don't judge, what do you say? Something about how you don't judge a pilot by how many times, if he's crashed or not. You judge a good bush pilot by how many times he's crashed and lived." And I was like, "Oh, that's a kind of an eye-opening statement of like, oh yeah, that guy's crashed a few planes, but he lives. He's still flying. He's doing good," which is a kind of a crazy ordeal. But just a different way of transport up there, and it was pretty cool.
That is neat. Is there anything that we should be talking about that we haven't talked about?
I don't think so. I mean, I guess to kind of bring full circle to the OnX side of things, but OnX is in Canada now. Download it, try it free if you haven't already, and put it to use on your hunts. Let us know what you think of it, and specifically with Canada, if there's anything that we feel that you guys feel that we should add or different, let us know. We love listening to customers' feedback, and I've got limited experience hunting in Canada, but the story you just told, and I hunted some black bears in Saskatchewan last year, actually earlier this spring. But we want to hear from the folks that are out there using it, like what's helpful, what's not, what would you like to see in the product. But I mean, the biggest thing again on X wise is just download it for free, try it, and hopefully it's one of those tools that helps you, go more places, explore new country, and find more success, really.
Amazing, Dylan. Thank you very much for being on the Silvercore podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.